Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Just one housekeeping point. You might have noticed when you came in today that we hired a new security outfit to help with the parking. So they're wearing vests and they're identified. But this is also maybe one of their first times on the campus. So be patient with them as they kind of figure out the flow of everything. But we're trying to accommodate everyone parking. Can't fix the elements right now, but inshallah we will fix the parking situation soon. So please bear with us. Also, this is it. We're entering into the final stretch. So this is what makes the winners versus the losers, is this final stretch. So forget about the last 20 days. Okay? Pretend like now Ramadan begins. Whatever is the past, past. If you're tired, find a way to get that tired thing out of you. And this is it. This is the final stretch. Literally, these nights could change your life forever. One dua could change your life forever. So put yourself in that kind of game day attitude, inshallah, and hopefully we'll all celebrate on the day of Eid together. One of the things about the ayat of the Quran, one of the most frequently mentioned things are the verses that talk about what happens in the hereafter. Verses that talk about paradise, verses that talk about hellfire, and they're in the most graphic, language, and they are in the most kind of almost unbelievable concepts. So I wanted to pause a little bit on that, not to talk about the specifics about heaven and hell or the akhirah, but just to talk about the idea that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts before us in the Quran, almost challenges us to sort of come outside of what we see in the immediate realm, in the immediate sphere, and to be creative and think about what might be. The Prophet ﷺ described it as مَا لَا عَيْنٌ رَأَتْ, what no eye has ever seen, وَلَا أُذُنٌ سَمَعَتْ, what no ear has heard. In a way, it's more and beyond language itself. It's something that you can't describe, because if I were to draw it for you, or if I were to try to describe it to you, automatically I will be limiting it. Because I would be using words or concepts, and I would kind of be bringing your mind to this one manifestation. But if you look at what the Salaf, how they received the Quran, they were actually remarkably creative people. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the importance of creativity to us as believers and our interaction with our faith, and specifically our interactions with the Quran. Creativity is something that we do not talk enough about. And the Ummah in general, East and West, North and South, in all of its manifestations, all of its sects, etc., has been an unbelievably, exceptionally creative group of people. Throughout every age, they were extremely creative. Because the Quran, the message of the Quran, the way the Quran is constructed, the way the verses and the stories are constructed, is it forces you to be creative and to think about what might be, what could be, how it might look like, etc. And therefore, if you are constantly thinking like that, you are used to thinking without limits. But the material world around us, by definition, puts limits on us. As a matter of fact, I was just thinking about this AI. Everyone's obsessed with AI. AI actually kind of kills your creativity. Yeah, it might, you might see Trump in a turban, Ayatollah turban, leader. Yeah, okay, but who cares? That's not creative. That's just dumb. It doesn't mean anything. It's fake. And it might show you some, weird person in the past and some person today, and they're having a meal together. Yeah, okay, but that's not what creativity is. Because the minute you see it, your mind is limited to that image. Your mind is limited to that parameter. We are talking about that which is beyond even the spoken word itself. What no eye has seen and what no ear has heard. One of the things that you are trained when you study the Islamic sciences is you are also trained on this issue of creativity. Imam al-Ghazali, he says in Haqiqatul Qawlayn, and Jalaluddin al-Suyuti, he picks this up on his book about ijtihad. He says that a mujtahid, the person who is extracting the rules from the Quran and Sunnah using their own efforts, beyond the madhabs, the highest caliber, the highest level of the Sharia sciences, the mujtahid's ijtihad is only going to be as good and as a function as great as their creativity is. I mean, what a statement by Imam al-Ghazali. That if you really want to add something to the community, you have to think way outside the box. You have to be completely creative. You have to think about what might come in the future. What might the community need? How will society, how might it look in the future? And the ulama, they really took this to heart. They thought about the wackiest things. They thought about what would happen if there was no state, if there was no imam, if there were no ulama, if there was no mufti. They talked about what would happen if the day itself, the 24-hour day, got busted, because we have the hadith of the Dajjal. So they even thought, well, what happens when we have to figure out how to pray, when we no longer can rely on the moon and the sun and the rising and the setting? Even then, they talked about how you can pray. I'm talking about medieval ulama, I'm not talking about the people now. I'm talking about the first few 4 or 5 centuries of Islam. They actually thought about these things. Whereas life for them was pretty much straightforward. It was not really that different. One of the things I write about in my book, Gate to Medina, I say that from the time of Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu till about the 1800s, the Muslim world was pretty much the same. There wasn't that much difference. If you were a Muslim living in 1800, anywhere in the Muslim world, and you read about the life of the Sahaba, how daily life was, you could kind of relate to that. Now, if my father told me stories about how he grew up, I probably couldn't even relate to that. Of course, my father exaggerates. But if you take away the exaggeration, and he tells me about how he grew up and how his father grew up, I'd probably be like, wow, that's like another planet altogether. So in the last couple hundred years, we have this big change. So I'm talking about the creativity of the early ulama, not the ulama now. The early ulama, they were thinking about these crazy scenarios because they were not confined by the material that was in front of them. They were not confined by the circumstance. They were free thinking. So creativity is one of the cornerstones of the Islamic intellectual tradition, that you have to think outside the box. You cannot just be limited by what's in front of you. And if you don't like the thing around you, then you have to try to create a scenario and a society and a life that fits the vision that you have. And build institutions and build organizations and train people to fulfill that new vision. That's how they did what they did. And this creativity was a part of all aspects of their life. If you look at, for example, Islamic art and architecture throughout the world, look at how beautiful the things they created were. Because they tried to make, the mosque or make the university look like the descriptions in the Quran. You go to Fez and you sit in the great Qaraween, and the roof is green, and the tiles are blue. It's like Jannah. It's like a garden underneath which rivers flow. I mean, they tried to physically manifest that. You walk into those places and you feel happy. You see these images of architecture in Andalusia, Alhambra and things like that. It's unbelievable. This is a piece of beauty. I don't think things that we create today are going to be in a museum a few hundred years from, well, we might not be around, humanity might not be around a few hundred years from now, but my point is that we don't really infuse this beauty and creativity in what we do and what we build because we are confined by the now, we are confined by the quantity. That's dangerous. I don't want us to be like that. I want us to be creative. I want us to think way, way, way outside the box. And if we are not happy with either what's happening here or around us, then let us create a better world, a different world, and build a generation of young Muslims that can build themselves and raise themselves to fulfill that new world that is beautiful. That is the power of creativity. The more we are confined by the quantitative and the consumption, the overconsumption that we have, which is, Ramadan, we talk about it as an audit on our consumption, not just about food and drink. We talked about auditing what we hear, what we see, the ideas that we consume, the images that we see all the time. This, in a way, is stunting our creativity. A lot of time, one of the most favorite sports of Muslims is to make fun of the ulama. I know you guys all make fun of the ulama. You see an alim, you say, oh, look how backward he is, look how dumb he is, look how medieval they are. Everyone loves to make fun of the ulama. I don't know why. Anyway, well, I kind of know why, but I mean, it's a common thing that we have. And when we do that, what we are not aware of is that the differentiation that we are looking for is not in the understanding of Islam. Because alhamdulillah, we have hundreds, thousands of well-trained people around the world in all sorts of languages. It's not that there is not an understanding of the Quran and the Sunnah. The differentiation is in this issue. The differentiation is in creativity and having a mind that can bend itself and go way out of its comfort zone to think about what might come. One of the things that we teach and we were taught in how to issue a fatwa, for example, is we call it al-ma'alat. Al-ma'al is what will happen in the future. The mufti has to think, okay, if I give this fatwa now, what might happen in the future? Because I don't want to say something and then you go off and do it, and then 4 or 5 steps later there's this huge fitna and I'm the cause of that fitna. So I kind of have to think ahead, well, what might happen with this fit? And it's in this context that Al-Ghazali said this quote, the mujtahid or the mufti's fatwa or ijtihad will only be as good as their creativity. So when we read about the verses of the hereafter, it's forcing us to think creatively, to think beyond that which can be measured. There is no fantasy, there is no movie, there is no CGI that can capture the things that Allah Ta'ala is talking about. Whether they be the pleasures and the reward of paradise, inshallah, that awaits us, or the horrible, horrible torments, may Allah Ta'ala protect us, that are mentioned about the punishment, starting in the grave and the hereafter. Very, very graphic things. Nothing can capture that. Nothing can capture that kind of pleasure or that kind of fear. Nothing can capture that. But it's within us to capture it from a creative point of view. So something for us to think about as we start thinking about the future, inshallah. Last thing I'll say, 2 more times when the dua is accepted. This is an easy one today. One time when the dua is accepted is right before you break your fast. Okay, so that's a no-brainer. So I know that we like to get together to have iftar, and when we get together we always start talking. Even at home, it's just me and my son, we're always talking, or my parents. But just take a couple minutes before the iftar just to make dua, because that's an accepted time. And then the flip side of that is right before Fajr prayer. So when you're having your suhoor, it's the last third of the night, it's the very, very end of the night. This is a time in which the dua is also accepted. So, of course, the fasting person's dua in general is accepted. That's a general thing. But specifically before you break your fast and before the Fajr prayer. So let us make use of those 2 times, inshaAllah. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Naam? Tahajjud is tonight, starting tonight. Let Rifai say, because I'm going to mess it up. 4:30? Are you sure? Did I say it right? Tahajjud is at 4:30 tonight. I thought that was tomorrow.